So in this section, I want to talk about being inclusive in your book. And this is something I haven't done in all of my books. I'll give you an example of the one time I did this with one of my nonfiction books. But the idea is to not just talk about yourself and your own personal experiences, to do some research, to pull some quotes from other people, but specifically to include quotes or information from other people who also have a platform. And this is kind of a bigger content marketing strategy. So as a way to build a platform, even before you're writing your book, before you think about promoting your book, you can be building resources and building relationships with other influencers who have a platform, who share your audience. So this is something I mapped out recently. I might make a longer video about this, but I'll kind of quickly walk you through what I was talking with a friend about, because he basically wants to be a coach or a service provider or something. He wants to start an online business, maybe make some courses, whatever. And I was kind of telling him, he needs to write a book. And so for him, he was thinking he would just publish the book and then use the book to generate leads or build his reputation so that he would be in a stronger position, so that people knew who he was, so that he could sell things. And actually, you can do a lot of cool things before the book is actually published, because when you first reach out to strangers and you ask for something, you want it to be a really easy ask. You don't want to ask them to share your book or promote your book, because they probably won't do it. You probably don't want to ask them to recommend other people to you, especially if you're providing services or something, because they won't feel comfortable recommending their friends. But if you do something like, and by including other people's stories or being inclusive, normally the strategy would be find 10 or 20 influencers in your field, follow them, read through their stuff, read their books, read their blog posts, and find a couple quotes, really smart stuff they've said that you can include in your book. And that's just kind of the start, because then you can say, you don't necessarily have to ask for permission. If it's less than 1%, and if it's already public, it's okay to just quote. It falls under fair use. So you could quote them and put it in your book, and that's fine. But the advantage of doing that, it's not just for the reader, it's also so that you can reach out to those influencers. And I would normally say something, even though you don't have to ask for permission, I would send them a quick message on social media or by email and say, like, I love your work. You really inspired me to write my own book, and this quote that you wrote in this blog post or in this book is so powerful. I just want to make sure it's okay to feature it to my audience or to put it in my book or something like that. Most people probably won't get back to you. A lot of people will probably say yes. Some people might ignore you. A couple people might say no, that's not okay. And even though, like, technically you could do it anyway, if you ask for permission and they say no, then you shouldn't. But the reason you would do all of those things is because after you've started a relationship by telling them, a little bit of flattery, telling them they were really influential, asking them if you can use their quote, that's a pretty easy thing. You're still not asking them to share your book. But when the book is done, you might say, by the way, I'm making the book free on this day to share it with my audience. Your quote is on page 53. If you would like to share it, that would be awesome too. You can kind of invite them to share it, and they might do it, especially because you've already, opened that dialogue. If you just start with, will you share my book? They're just going to say no. Or will you review my book or whatever? They're going to say no. There's no reason for them to do it. But if they're in the book and you're being inclusive with their content, it's a much stronger reason for them to share. People don't really share other people's stuff that much unless it's amazing. Most people share their own stuff. So the other thing that works really well is to take all those quotes, take 50 or 100 quotes. Maybe they don't all go in your book, but when you're doing research about your topics, maybe your book is broken up into 10 smaller subjects, that's 10 really good blog posts. And I've actually done this, so I'll leave a link to where I've already done this research for books that I haven't even written yet, but I have basically blog posts that are just a collection of really good quotes from other people, which I can go back and design really well and stylize so that they look really good. And then the thing that I haven't done yet, but I will once I'm getting ready to the book launch plan, is I will turn those into infographics. So it'll be a nicely designed infographic quote that has that person's quote, possibly their picture or a picture to the book that they've written it in. I'll share that on social media. It won't be book promotion for my own book. I won't mention my own book at all. It'll just be, here's a great quote from this other person I found, and I'll use a couple hashtags and I will tag them in the posts. On Twitter this works a little bit better, but the way it will work, and I'll probably also link back to the main blog posts on my site that just had the links of quotes about this particular subject or topic. And then every day I could just tweet out one quote or one image. The advantage of doing the images, if it's just one quote, it's a little too short, people won't see it. If it's a quote and a nicely designed image graphic that you've made, that's much more likely that those people will see, oh, this person's talking about me and they tagged me and they're sharing my content and they made me look really good by making this nice image graphic. It's really likely they're going to retweet it or share it with their audience. So without actually having to ask them to do anything or send an email, which they're probably going to ignore, I would start with that. I would just share some stuff and tag them. They're likely to see it, to like it, and possibly to retweet it, so that a couple weeks later, if I do send an email to them asking for permission to put it in the book, which is kind of how I would probably do it. I would tweet something first to get their attention. I would like and follow them and comment on some of their stuff, so they kind of know who I am before I even send any emails at all. But then when you do start sending emails, especially if you're asking for something, the first email you send out to influencers should really just be like, hey, thanks, your stuff is awesome, let me know if I can help you with anything, with no ask. And then if they respond later on, you can build that up into like a bigger ask or solid ask. But you really don't want to be asking for stuff. You want to be providing value and helping them and promoting their stuff first. So the advantage is you're building all of this great content that other people are sharing, which will help your blog post to rank well, and you can also include some of that stuff in the book to make the book better. And then when you have the book that's finished, it's much more likely, a lot of people are more likely to share it on their Twitter page or on their Facebook page, even if they don't share it by email. Like I might casually share something on Twitter or Facebook to my audience that I wouldn't share, in a real email. That's a bigger ask. I probably wouldn't promote other people's stuff for me, because like if you haven't read the book, or if you don't know the person that well, you're not gonna, anything you share, it's assumed that you're recommending, and I wouldn't recommend anything unless I've read it, unless it's a really high value. So asking someone to share something for you, it's not going to work very well. But if it's just like a image quote about them, that's something that's really easy for them to share or put on their blog or whatever. So that's basically what I've been doing, and I'll show you down below how all of that works. A couple of things that are a little bit higher level. I was talking with my friend the other day, and telling him about all this stuff. And what I recommended him actually do was, and his book, the book that he's writing, he's not even really writing a book. He wants to collect like 100 stories of people who have successfully done this thing that his book is about. So he just wants other people to recommend stories to him. And that's a much better ask, because what he can do now is set up a Google form on his website for like a writing contest, because writing contests work really well. There's a whole bunch of like writing contest blogs or websites that just feature writing contests. So if you have a writing contest and you get listed on all these sites, you can just submit your link and they will all link back to you. That's really good link building, and you'll get more traffic for the writing contest. It's not exactly the right audience. You're not really trying to attract writers, so I'd be cautious about that, but traffic is always good. So in this guy's case, he would set up a little form and he would say, I'm collecting these stories, it's a writing contest, maybe I have a prize or something. It doesn't have to be a huge prize, maybe $100. It's still worth it for some people. The main idea was people in his audience who maybe aren't writers but would like to try to win a prize and tell their story. Maybe they are excited about telling their story, and maybe winning $100, or maybe even if they don't win, 10 or 20 of these stories will get featured in this book. And then you'll share it to your audience or whatever. That can be an advantage to other people. If you're the organizer, if you're doing the organizing and publishing the book so that they can have their short story published in a book, that's a pretty cool thing. So you can set up a form, a landing page that would have like submit your story, a little bit of info about the book, a little bit of info about you, and then like sign up to my email list and I'll tell you when the book is ready. I would have that also, because then you're driving traffic to a writing contest. It's much easier to get people to share something like that. He can reach out to all the influencers in the space, and he's not asking for anything. He's just saying, hey, I'm looking for some good stories. Do you know anybody who might be interested in sharing their story about how they've done this successfully? That's really easy for them to share. And you could also say something like, could you share this on your community board? If you're reaching out to influencers who have a blog post, or maybe they're like in part of an organization, or like they're the local chapter of an organization, you can reach out to all those people and say, could you put this on your bulletin board? Could you put it on your website? And they could all be sharing your event, basically, your writing contest, your project, because this is a cool book that you're doing to solve this people's need and serve the community. It's just really high value, and it's really easy for them, for influencers, to share something that's really high value because they're not selling anything, they're not recommending you, they're just saying, here's a cool way, you know, you can win this writing contest, you can get your writing featured. It's kind of a win-win for everybody. So you could get a lot of shares, you could get a lot of backlinks. Once other people are sending you traffic, like if you're going to reach out to influencers, this would be like the one way I would start, because it's much easier for them to share. They would be sending you their traffic. Some people would be signing up, so those people's audiences would be your audience too, and some people would be interested in the book, and some people would sign up to your email list down below, so that when the book launches, you've already got, you know, an active community and a whole bunch of people who have submitted their stories. So if you include all of those people's stories in your book, not only does it make your book a lot more engaging and interesting, because you're showing success stories, which you want to be doing anyway. Even if they're like, you're starting out and you don't have client testimonials, you could be getting other people to submit their success stories to show that it's possible, so that you can be putting examples in your book that make people feel like, you know, yeah, I can do this too, and they're learning about how other people have done this. It just makes your book higher value for the readers, but also it builds a big community of people who are already interested in your book, people who have submitted to your book, people who have shared your book, even if they didn't submit themselves, they've talked about it or shared it to other people who they might recommend, who they think has had a good story. Everybody likes telling their stories, so they probably know someone who tells stories. Anyway, so I would structure all of that stuff and set it up, even if you don't use all of that material to put in your book, because it's great platform building and great pre-marketing, and building an email list and giving influencers a reason to share you and your content. That's kind of how the way I would start off preparing to launch a nonfiction book. And I haven't done this in all my books, but I will be doing some of this in some future books because I really want to do to a bigger level. And I don't really talk about, like in this course, which is about writing, I don't really talk about the content marketing strategies that I've been using to launch bestsellers, but it's definitely important. So this is some of the stuff that I would do. So the other really cool thing that I also have been thinking about recently is making longer infographics. So instead of just one-off image quotes or one-off blog posts with all the image quotes, if you have a massive infographic, like 100 best quotes from, you know, authors about this subject, if I make a bunch of infographics, 100 is a lot because it'd be too long for an infographic, but maybe it's 17 or 25 or something. The advantage of infographics, which a friend of mine only clued me into this yesterday, and I was just figuring, like for my content, I would have those blog posts, I would have the individual images, I'd have a featured image, and then I'd have a Pinterest image. And the Pinterest image is usually just your longer, a longer version of a featured image, which is longer because it looks better on Pinterest, but you could turn that into an infographic, which is just like the top 10 quotes or something like that out of all of the ones, and then that you can share on Pinterest and people will share. But the other really cool thing about having a really good image quote is that other people can share it, and I've seen this done where you can reach out to a whole bunch of blogs or websites and say, hey, I made this infographic, would you share it with your audience, or would you share it on your blog post? But you could also just be sharing it a lot. And the advantage is if a lot of other people are sharing it and a lot of other people are saying, this is a really cool image. For example, I just made an image for this course, basically, which is the 25 or 26 chapters that I use to plot fiction. That's a really strong infographic. It has all this stuff right there. I'm going to make another one about book cover design that just has like a checklist for all the important things you need to have in your book cover. So that you can like grade your own book cover before you publish. It's going to be, instead of a blog post, it's going to be just one image graphic that has all of the information, has all the top stuff. For my friend who I was talking about this stuff with, my other friend, he's doing something like, for example, I think it's a, what is it? Hold on a second. Okay, so it was a LinkedIn profile. One of the main things he does is help people fix their LinkedIn profiles so that they can get a job, to help them find jobs easier, or something kind of like that. So he should be making, you know, content, blog posts, videos about all this stuff, and courses. But a really high value thing would just be a picture of his perfect LinkedIn profile page and then a breakdown of like arrows and like explaining the title, the subtitle, the headline, why you need to do these things, why he made it this way. So that would be like one perfect picture where all the value is in the picture. And then down below it could have an upsell opt-in where it would be like, it would be something like, you know, sign up to get my 10-point checklist, or an optional upsell, a content upgrade is what you call them. So this picture would not only like show off his exact LinkedIn profile and show that he's the expert at LinkedIn, but it would break down exactly how, you know, other people can model their LinkedIn. Like you can just use that example and read through his bullet points checklist and use it to completely revise or fix or edit your own LinkedIn profile. So it's a really cool, really high value thing, and because it's an image, it's a lot easier to share. People will share an image if it's really cool and all the value is right there. They'll share it on Twitter or Facebook. They'll share it with their friends, which is great. And you want to have like your link or your content upgrade down at the bottom just to say like, for more or for a video breakdown, you know, go here, go to a blog page where then you would have a longer breakdown and, you know, a content upgrade for something they sign up with to opt in. But anyway, the thing I learned yesterday that I thought was really cool is that you can do a reverse image search. So after you've shared this, and a lot of people are sharing and other people are featuring it on your blog, you can do a reverse image search and see who else has used your image on their blog posts, and then you can just contact them and say, hey, I saw you use my image on your blog post. That's fine, but could you please link back to my website? So that's a really cool thing. Like instead of asking people to share it, just to share super high value, super useful content. This is actually something I would definitely recommend for almost every nonfiction book. You should be turning everything into image quotes or infographics or checklists, anything you have that's like a list or a bullet point or like 7 strategies. My book Page to Create has like 7 main strategies, so I definitely want to turn that into a whole bunch of posters or checklists or anything that I can, because it's a lot easier to share graphic stuff, image stuff. What's the word? Anyway, things that people can see. It's a lot easier to share than things people can read, especially if like you take all the information in a whole book or in a whole chapter and you squeeze it down into like the essential bullet points and make a graphic for it. That's really high value and something people can share and get behind. It's great marketing. So that's kind of a whole different thing that's not exactly under this topic of being inclusive, but it kind of is. I hope that helps to introduce the idea of why this stuff is super valuable for book marketing, and something that a lot of people don't actually do. This is all the stuff I'm going to be talking about. I talk about it in Reach Your Readers, which is my first course on book marketing, and a little bit in guerrilla publishing. But my next course, the 21-Day Author Platform, is going to be a lot more high-level marketing strategies. So this is some of the stuff that I do, that I will continue to do when I'm switching to, I always did, it's a whole other subject of whether you're writing nonfiction to attract leads or clients or sell services or just to make money with your nonfiction book. It's a different thing. You want to be doing some of the same stuff, but the marketing will be a little bit different. So the books that I have done in the past have been mostly lead generation. They've been very specialized stuff to help my audience solve a specific problem that introduces them to me and gets them back into my funnels or my platform. But I want to be doing very general best-selling nonfiction stuff, which means I need to build a general audience to a much bigger platform. It's actually harder to sell general nonfiction because it's less specific. It's a little harder to hit the targeting and get the pain points and get the benefits as well for general nonfiction. But that's what I want to do, so I have to build up my platform a lot bigger, which means figuring out paid advertising really well, but also just focusing on all this content marketing stuff, which is basically growing your platform for free, building your audience in your platform, getting more traffic without investing in ads, because it can be difficult to make your ads profitable, especially if you don't already have, you know, products to sell, if this is your first book launch or whatever. So those are the things I'm going to be diving into in my next course. So this is kind of a light, quick introduction to why it's really important, but that's also why it's important to not just focus on your own stuff, but to be inclusive, because like if I have an infographic of, I have a blog post of like 100 writing tips, I'll link to some other of my content that I've made down below. It's all I could be doing better, but I've been doing it for a while and it does work really well. And so I built content of like I went to this writing conference in London a couple years ago, and there was a YouTuber there who went around to all of the authors asking for one tip of writing advice. So she only had a YouTube video. So I asked her if I could take that YouTube video and turn it into content by hiring someone to transcribe it all, I think, and breaking it down into a blog post, and then, you know, designing it so it looked good. And I haven't even, I think, turned it all into an infographic yet. I could turn it into a SlideShare. There's a lot of other things I could do to repurpose that content. But you want to make like one huge big piece of amazing content and then break it down into smaller pieces that you can share on different platforms that is valuable. It has intrinsic obvious value. People share it by itself. They don't share it because they're promoting your book. They share it because it's an awesome, like the best piece of content on the internet. It looks great, but also because it features a lot of their other best-selling authors. So those other authors will share it. Fans of those other authors will share it. It's not just about you. If it was just you and like 100 smart things that you've said, it's not platform building, it's not marketing. It'd be a lot harder to get shares. So that's why being inclusive is really smart and really valuable.